from my perspective on looking at your site and even the work that you've done with folks is that your food awareness journal is the tool that
Yes.
you use with folks, also a cognitive behavioral therapy designed tool, kind
Hmm.
of like Savor is. And so, how does that work with clients? What does it how does it help them with that stop part? How does
Yeah.
it help them with the awareness part? Yeah, just explaining more about what that journal entails and how it seems very really effective for
Yeah, I mean,
folks.
I do. There's templates and examples and training videos. That's at eatingenlightenment.com. In a nutshell, you're not going to binge if you write. People are, in a nutshell,
Yeah.
you're not going to binge if you write how you feel down. Just very simply, if you're
Yeah.
looking for a solution and you write, if you're looking to stop binging, it the this you can hang your hat on this. You're not going to binge if you write stuff down.
Mhm.
Um, that's where it starts. That's where, you know, people get this solid, practical. This is not some sort of conceptual thing here. This is pen on paper. I do encourage pen on paper.
Absolutely.
This isn't you thinking about what you're feeling. This is you writing,
Mhm.
pen on paper, ink on, this is
Mhm.
writing. I feel,
Mhm.
I don't know what I feel, right? There's like a
Yeah.
lot of stuff comes up when people try to do this. Um, but it gives it by really putting your faith, and I do think this becomes like a spiritual practice, but by putting your faith in this little guideline, you're going to journal with awareness before you eat, before a binge. You you stop, you go with awareness.
Mhm.
Your awareness deepens into understanding why you're eating, like what's
Mhm.
going on,
Mhm.
um, whether you haven't eaten all day, whether you're too stressed, whether there's something uncomfortable going on. Um, the reflection, the journal serves as this tool, this
Mhm.
repository of reflection as well. When you write down the time and place, you start, and maybe you don't always journal before. Maybe you miss sometimes, right? Maybe you journal afterwards because you were eating and then you realize, oh shit, I ate, I didn't record it. You write
Mhm.
down that you try to backtrack, you try to say, okay, this is the time, this is the place. And you get this record, and soon it get this record, and it's like, okay, I am binging either late at night or like in these transition moments. Transition moments are very common, but you see like, okay, this is when I'm binging. You start to see like that's what this is about. You start to see, um, that kind of goes to the R in your Saber model.
Mhm.
The reflection piece is
Mhm.
so important. I call it a growth mindset.
Mhm.
Like, okay, here's what I'm going to do differently next time. Um, I just find the pen on paper to be like, um, so practical. I mean, I think people who struggle with food, generally speaking, they know a lot. They know a lot of theories. They know a lot about nutrition. Um, their problem is not knowing; it's thinking. Almost, it's a
Mhm.
big problem. It's thinking. And
Mhm.
so I think people learn about intuitive eating. And don't get me wrong, I love intuitive eating. I do teach intuitive eating, but I don't start with intuitive eating. I think
Mhm.
people hear about intuitive eating, they hear about whatever, health at every size or this,
Mhm.
this anti-diet stuff or
Mhm.
but these things become just like more ideas that kind of get lodged in their head. And
Mhm.
and so the practice of writing, it it's tough. It is
Mhm.
tough. It is tough. I understand that it's tough. Um, it's doable and it gives you something really practical and that leads to very rapid gains. If like in your first week, if you can manage to journal before a binge, your binges are going to go down. You'll see like results very quick. And I feel like that kind of jolt, like, oh wow, I'm really making progress. it gives people so much like momentum. I think starting off this journey of healing is important. I've definitely had clients where we didn't quite get off to like a we got off to a good start, but not a fast enough start where
Mhm.
they whenever you work with someone, it's a big investment. It's time and energy, and you get your hopes up, and then maybe like a month or two later, if things quite haven't, even if you're making progress, like
Yeah.
people just want faster results, and so I think the journal really is a good starting place. Um, the journal leads so beautifully, so beautifully into the deeper work. Um, when you write out your thoughts, and I'll give a quick story about just something that came up recently. Um, I was asking the client, "Hey, let me I asked for permission. Could I see your food journal?" And I didn't see any thoughts written down, so I said, "Hey, like, what are you thinking in this moment?" And he replied, "Well, like, um, when I write down," he said, I feel like this was not before a binge. He said, "I feel like when I write down that I don't need to binge." He said something like that, and I was like, "Okay, that's an accurate thought. That is accurate. That is true." And I said, "What about like why don't you try writing down what's stopping you from writing down before a binge? Like what would you think before a binge?" And he's like, "I don't know what I'd think." And I said, "Well, like probably are thinking there's not enough food at a subconscious level, right?" And
Mhm.
he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He's like, "I'm thinking that there's not enough food. I got to binge. I got to like get all this stuff now." I'm like, "You need to write that out. You need to
Mhm.
write that out and see those distorted beliefs on paper." And so once you can see these subconscious beliefs that we all have that are like guiding you, that are guiding you to binge, but you aren't really aware of them. If you can get those subconscious beliefs out on paper, um, you can. I mean, it, yeah, that's where your gravity starts to shift.
Mhm.
That's when your gravity starts to shift, and you really start getting some lasting change. That's when that's really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I've had clients, I don't know if you've had this too, that initially they'll resist the journal. They're like, "I'm not a journaler. What? Take the time to put pen to paper? No, that's not me." And so I tell them like, it doesn't have to be a novel. I'm not asking you to write a novel, just to write some bullet points down. I feel this. I
Mm,
feel this, and I
mm,
want to, and in your case, I want to eat this. Or, I mean, many of my clients are doing that too. But, and so getting them kind of to almost redefine too, like what does journaling mean? Because I think sometimes there's this stigma around, just kind of like there is with mindfulness. I mean, mindfulness is increasingly becoming cool, but for the people that don't identify their whole lifestyle, maybe around with like the diet culture version of mindfulness and the just right leggings and the green smoothies and all of that, then they kind of, clients can lump all that stuff together, and it's not that at all. And so I've had that come up with my clients, and we kind of have to break down some of those beliefs, some of those very stereotypical beliefs, and say, no, there is really good science too that says no matter what you're working on, if you're working on your relationship with food, or you're working on moving a business forward, or your personal relationships, like when you get those thoughts
mm,
out of your head
mm,
and down, like
mm,
where you can visually see them in front of you,
mm,
things shift.
mm,
And there's science behind that that supports that. And I
mm,
agree with you too, even with having all the training in intuitive eating, and intuitive eating as a framework to help people understand the relationship with food, and come back around to more of a balanced relationship with nutrition and all that. But I if it depends on the person, but I'll have people often start with the workbook, like
mm,
the intuitive eating workbook, before like reading the textbook. And at the time, the workbook was the most updated text too for them to read. But it was more around the idea of the exercises, the activities for them to read, jog a thought and then process that thought out by answering the
mm,
reflection prompts or doing the charts or the tables or what have you. And then we would do that, process that all in session too. But again, it was this idea of like, get out of your head, put it on the paper down below you and see what patterns come up. Like you were mentioning earlier, the other benefit of doing a journal like that is to see these patterns, seeing these patterns of, I'm thinking of one client now in particular where she doesn't take the time to nourish herself all day because she's nourishing everybody else around her.
mm,
And so then she comes home at the end of a long, crazy, busy day and it's open the refrigerator and open cupboards. And she's frustrated with binging and having not feeling well, not sleeping well because she's too full and all of this. And so for us to put together those dots of going, well, look, you haven't fed yourself in like 8 hours before you came home. And what you did feed yourself was a couple of bars and a milk or something like that, but not something that there's nothing wrong with those foods, but you may not find them nourishing day after day after day after day. Like taking the time to 10 minutes to sit your butt down and have something that is more satisfying, it changes your whole relationship with caring for yourself.
mm,
And then that can trickle out into what happens in the evening time with you and food. So she was able to, yeah, to see that all play out in her life when she,
mhm,
you do those journaling activities and the reflection activities. And then they can see, oh, yeah, the dots kind of follow like this,
mm,
and they're not a failure for how
mm.
those dots play out because sometimes it's just based on physiology too. Like, well, yeah, you're eating way more in the evening time because you're freaking hungry,
Yeah.
or you're eating more in the evening time because you're super frustrated from what happened at work today. So again, not your fault. It's just your psychology asking you to tune in and say, hey, I need some TLC right now. um,
Yeah, I love
is
this. I
important.
love what you're saying. I love how she's being more caring to herself as a result of seeing this stuff. I do feel that this food work is so spiritual because you become
Yeah.
through this process like a more caring person, a
Hmm.
more person towards yourself, and this is very deep transformation. Uh, Becoming a more caring person, like the essence of you changes as you learn. You become more caring, and one thing that I really like, and I'm gonna take this away with me too. I'm realizing as you speak, and I'm going to bring this forward with me. Like that journaling is not just about food, but it's like a lifestyle. That's what I'm taking away from this right now. It's like my message I think can grow stronger if it's not just like journaling for food, like because you have a problem, but like journaling as a way of life. Like you want to journal. You want to write down your thoughts. You want to get your emotions out on paper. You want to like write out your priorities or write out your goals or write out your gratitude journaling. Like
Yeah.
you want to write stuff down.
Mhm.
Like this is like a pillar of survival in modern society, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
you gotta write. You got to like you're not going to be able to thrive. I mean, look, I got a journal right here. I got
Mhm.
a journal on my desk, and like it has random notes in it, right?
Yeah.
It's got, let's see, what do, I don't even know. It's like dribbled. Got detergent trap. This is my to-do list. But I also have like business ideas. Like I don't
Yeah.
even. It's like really sloppily written. Anyways, but it's written.
Yeah.
And
Same.
I think you could maybe use an app or something to write. But writing it down.
Well, there's something
I don't
too
know.
that I think is just more, and there are apps. In fact, the Body Love Society is putting together and about ready to release an app on intuitive eating and body positivity right now, which is awesome. It'd be another great tool. But I think, of course, it depends on the person. But again, going back to some of that research that's been done, when people can step away from their device and just be with themselves, a
Mm,
pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, like
mm.
we've been doing that for millennia. Like there's stuff written on caves.
Yeah.
from way, way back. And people were doing drawings and they were processing what was going on and their emotions and all of that. And so, while I think that might be helpful to have apps and it might keep people more engaged, especially depending on the age of the population, but I don't think that they completely replace that act of just sitting down with yourself and uh yeah, just putting the pen to paper and just something very organic like that, a
Yeah.
very organic way of taking care of yourself.
Mm,
One of the
mm.
questions before we wrap up that has come up to mind, and I can just hear some of my listeners and clients and stuff saying, "Well, yeah, but
But
what if what if a person," and you in a way kind of had your own experience with this, so I'm curious how this would play out for you and your thoughts on this. So if a person is, say, binging, um, not just for an emotional connection, but say they're binging because they came from that place of restriction with food. So we'll just stick in the food realm for the moment. And so they're what I might call fuck it eating or backlash eating. Like that's why the binging is happening from this physiological and or satisfaction perspective of like, I didn't get enough for 20 freaking years of my life. I'm like, I'm getting it now. So a lot of times my clients will have this fear of, if I start paying attention and noticing and like trying to
Mm,
heal from the binging, does that mean I'm going back to restricting? And if by writing down what I'm eating, because for many of them, they were doing all kinds of crazy food journals and
yes,
the
yes.
calorie tracking crap.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so while they're uncomfortable in this fuck it eating kind of binging stage, there's a lot of fear around doing something like a food journal because it has such a negative
Does.
connotation from them,
Uh,
tying back to their restricting. So
mm,
even though you and I would say, like, we could see the bigger picture and say,
mhm,
nah, you're not going to go back to that place. I mean,
mm,
as we have a sense of them from our clinical experience, but for them to trust, you're not likely to go back there. You have way other tools and skills that will keep you from going back to that restriction.
yeah.
But how would you approach that with
Mm,
with someone that's concerned about using the journaling, having it being triggering to their restriction again?
mm.
How would you approach that with someone if they asked?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It can be. It's certainly many people have. Um, yeah, they've recorded food, dieting, been there. Dieting is horrible. And this food journaling, this calorie recording, it can be such an essential part of of various programs that it seems like there's a lot of overlap. Um, I think on a cognitive level, on a surface layer, it'd be like, hey, listen, we're not writing down any calories. There's no calorie limit you even have for the day. This isn't you aren't good one day for getting under your calorie limit. You're not bad the next day if you go over it. This is this is about awareness. This is not about the amount of food. It's about studying your psychology around food.
Mhm.
This is about time and even noticing time and place can help you understand your habits. Uh, Encouragement to write down these thoughts and what you're feeling. I mean, tell me, did you ever write down your emotions before when you were dieting? No, like it was all about the caloric intake.
Mhm.
We're not even doing any calories. We're talking about emotions. We're talking about awareness. Um, and so that's kind of the first thing I would say. But
Mhm.
I do feel that even saying that, um, there probably will still be anxiety around starting a food journal practice,
Mhm.
um, around any sort of food thing and writing. I think this anxiety, um, you know, whether it's oftentimes people are afraid of giving up binge eating.
Mhm.
There's anxiety no matter what happens when you start to seriously turn the mirror back at yourself and look at your food habits, what that means, um, what it means to you, what you're binging, what this actually means to you. Um, the anxiety is to be expected, right? Like being anxious doesn't mean you shouldn't not do something. There's going to be some anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, it is sort of anxious, anxiety provoking, and this comes up too when people begin to journal. There's a lot of anxiety around their food journaling. Like, am I doing it right? And you know, there's a lot of anxiety in this um, process. Um, so that's to be expected, and I'm still asking you to do it. um,
Right.
and to you can however you can get over that hump. There's going to be anxiety. There's, whether if science convinces you, great. There's just so much science behind cognitive behavioral therapy. There's so much science behind journaling. um, I get that science. I'm sure various diets also touted their sciences too, so why should you trust science? um, you know um, the good news about this is I think you can try it out for yourself pretty easily. I think you
Mhm.
can get a pen and paper and write out, you don't, like, for example, if you had breakfast and you had cereal, just write out cereal, 5 letters, no, six, Cereal. There's no calories. I'm not talking milk or whatever the type of cereal. Just write out cereal. Write out, approximately when you had it. Write out where you had it, your kitchen. Uh, this shouldn't take too long. This is like a minute. Write out. I like what you said. I love what you said. How you weren't the entire attitude behind this food awareness journal practice is it's different. It like the energy behind a calorie journal is I don't know. The energy is, I guess, scientific sort of. When you have a calorie journal, you're trying to be a scientist. You're trying to, measure and to be neat and you know
Yeah. Yeah.
and this energy it's much more open. It is much more, it's forgiving because there's no punishment ever. um the entire context is different. This is a this is helping you see. This is helping you see. I'm trying to, these words are coming to me in the moment. A food journal is helping you see. It's not anything else other than that.
Yeah, it's helping you connect
Yeah,
the dots like you
yeah.
mentioned
Mhm,
earlier.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah, I like to think of the like you said, when you the journals are connected to calories and grams and macros and all of that. It's we talk a lot about external validators. It's all about external validators, which is what diet culture is fueled on versus an awareness journal is more internal.
mm.
It's asking you to be internal of what are your thoughts, what are your emotions, and there's no there's no quantifiers to them. It just is. So then there's can be no comparison. You can't compare
Yeah,
yourself from
yes.
one day to the next day.
Uh-huh.
It's just who you are in that moment versus those external validators you can have comparison with. Like, I ate this many calories, I ate this
Mhm,
many macros, or I weighed
mhm,
this.
mhm.
Then you have something to compare. But with awareness, there's you don't have you can't dwell on
Yeah,
comparison. It just
yeah.
is what it is. It's again, it's present. It's in this moment. And when you can draw those dots of like, well, I feel this in this moment because this happened to me, no matter what happens to you the next day, you still can't compare it to the day before because now you're living in a whole different situation. So there's no comparison. So I know you have to wrap up, and I could talk with you
I
probably
love this
forever.
conversation. Oh my god, yes, yes, I love it.
But quickly before you go, let people know where they can find you. And I think you even have, is it a free downloadable food awareness journal and then your quiz? Tell people
Yeah,
where to find all that.
so Eating Enlightenment, it's how you spell it, Eating Enlightenment. That's the website, that's where I'm at. So on the front page, there's a journal or a download you get on my email list, and it's a folder with a template, but also an example template. I keep a food awareness journal for an entire day. There's a video of that. I would love to like put this interview up in that folder as well. It's really a resource guide on all these questions that come up when you start keeping a food journal, how to do it, all these other associations, and and also, yeah, there's one other thing too where there's like an advanced sort of thing where you work with your thoughts. I think the food journal can lead to a deeper thing. So there's like a little exercise on that. Um, yeah, that's at Eating Enlightenment.
.com. Okay. Super. Well, I'm so glad you were able to come
Yeah, thank
today,
you for having
and
me
it's
too.
great to have conversations. Would be great to do more of these in the future. I think you and I have a lot to say about all of this, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
I love
So,
this. Cool. All right.
yeah. Thanks again, Jared. I will talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thanks,
Take
Amanda,
care.
so much. Okay. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Cool.